Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everybody. How y'all doing? I hope you're doing well. I'm totally not sleepy at all. I was not supposed to be awake this early, but I slept like absolute shit tonight, so I'm up. Ow, and I just hit my mic. This is fine. There's construction happening, everything's fine. Thank you for the head pat. I am tired. Oh my god. But also, I'm so cozy. Like, I don't even have any of my lights on in my room. I just have like the little bit of light filtering in from the curtains. You didn't hear the mic hit? Oh, yeah. That means I set it up correctly. Maybe you might not hear the construction either then. Oh, I'm feeling the muscle soreness from yesterday's gym real bad today. Oh my god, that hurts. um, I need to get my water there. Okay. I have water. I don't have a snack. That's fine. I should not be getting hungry, technically, hopefully. Um, Eating? I'm just back my bullshit with Sherlock again. I forgot to turn the toggle with the thing, right? Is that what I needed to do? Yeah, the reading command. That's fine. Okay. So, so. Alright. Let us start reading The Resident Patient. Nice, Agadoo. Glancing over the somewhat incoherent series of memoirs which I have endeavored to illustrate a few of the mental peculiarities of my friend Mr. Sherlock Holmes, I have been struck by the difficulty which I have experienced in picking out examples which shall in every way answer my purpose. Kinda learned all the words, yeah. I need to increase the list, and I keep forgetting because I keep forgetting to put it on my to-do list. But I'll try to remember it for today at least. Mm. Oh my god. Okay. For in those cases in which Holmes had performed some tour de force of an analytical reasoning and has demonstrated the value of his peculiar methods of investigation, the facts themselves have often been so slight or so commonplace that I could not feel justified in laying them before the public. On the other hand, it has frequently happened that he has been concerned in some research where the facts have been of the most remarkable and dramatic character, but where the share where he has himself taken in determining their causes has been less pronounced than I, as his biographer, could wish. The small matter which I have chronicled under the heading of A Study in Scarlet, and other later one connected with the loss of the Gloria Scott, may serve as examples of this Scylla and Charybdis? What the fuck is that? Which are forever threatening the historian. It may be in the business of which I am now about to write the part which my friend played is not sufficiently accentuated, and yet the whole train of circumstances is so remarkable that I cannot bring myself to omit it entirely from this series. It had been a close, rainy day in October. Our blinds were half drawn, and Holmes lay curled upon the sofa, reading and rereading a letter which he had received by the morning post. For myself, my term of service in India had trained me to stand heat better than cold, and a thermometer of 90 was no hardship. But the paper was uninteresting. Parliament had risen. But what? Mm. Huh? What is what is happening? I'm so confused. Sailor, what is happening? I'm, huh? Mm. Why is it? Oh God. I'm too sleepy for this. This is fine. This is the perfect kind of attitude to have for ASMR, I think. Half asleep. Okay. Where was I? Okay. There we go. Everybody was out of town, and I yearned for the glades of the New Forest or the shingles of South Sea. Even- To be, I need to go in and delete some clips I made by accident. Oh my god. Okay. A depleted bank account had caused me to postpone my holiday, and as to my companion, neither the country nor the sea presented the slightest attraction to him. He loved to lie in the very centre of millions of people, with his filaments stretching out and running through them, responsive to every cry, every little rumour or suspicion of unsolved crime. Appreciation of nature found no place amongst his many gifts, and his only change was that when he turned his mind from the evil doer of the town to track down the brother of the country. Why do I feel like I've read that paragraph before? I swear I've read that paragraph before. I haven't read this story. Wait, there's been an update. Oh yeah, it's Silver Wolf, isn't it? On the banner now. I have still played none of the story. I'm literally just collecting the characters at this point. And I've definitely got enough stuff to get Silver Wolf. And if I'm lucky with her, I could probably get Nessia, whatever. The pink haired girl. I need Silver Wolf because I don't have anyone that does imaginary damage other than Adventurine, and he doesn't really count. He doesn't do a lot of damage. Oh my god. Okay, no, I can't get distracted. Um, because I will get distracted and talk about it forever. Uh, I cannot be sure of the exact date, as some of my memoranda upon the matter have been mislaid, but it must have been towards the end of the first year during which Holmes and I shared chambers in Baker Street. It was boisterous October weather, and we had both remained indoors all day. I, because I feared with my shaken health to face the keen autumn wind, while he was deep in some of those Bruce's chemical investigations which absorbed him utterly as long as he was engaged upon them. Towards evening, however, the breaking of a test tube brought his research to a premature ending, and he sprang up from his chair with an exclamation of impatience and a clouded brow. I was supposed to have that turned off for ASMR. Hi. Hello. We cannot have another stream. It's just him. No, it's okay, Hitmanic. You're good. You're good. It's my bad. Thank you for the scritches. How you doing? Hope you're doing well. Oh my gosh, I should at least fix his mouth tracking if he's gonna be used this often. Okay. A day's work ruined, Watson, said he, striding across to the window. Ha! The stars are out, and the wind has fallen. What do you say to ramble through London? I was weary of our little sitting room and gladly acquiesced. For 3 hours we strolled about together, watching the ever-changing kaleidoscope of life as it ebbs and flows through Fleet Street and the Strand. His characteristic talk, with its keen observance of detail and subtle power of inference, held me amused and enthralled. It was 10 o'clock before we reached Baker Street again. Brougham was waiting at the door. You've proven your sanity. Interesting. Okay. I'll have a look. Oh gosh, thank you for the sketches, IDK. Oh my god, this is so funny. Vindication for real. Hmm. Hmm. A doctor's general practitioner, I perceive, said Holmes. Not been long in practice, but has had a great deal to do. Come to consult us, I fancy. Lucky we came back. I was sufficiently conversant? That's not a word I've ever seen before. Um, hi. Thank you for the follow, Snake noodle soup. Thank you, I appreciate it. I want noodle soup. Noodle soup is good. Damn it, now I'm hungry. Okay. Um, I was sufficiently conversant with Holmes's methods to be able to follow his reasoning and to see that the nature of his state of various medical instruments in the wicker basket which hung in the lamplight inside the brougham had given him the data for his swift deduction. The light in our window above showed that this late visit was indeed intended for us. With some curiosity as to what could have sent for a brother medico to us at such an hour, I followed Holmes into our sanctum. Oh my god. Cognizant? But it's not cognizant, it's like conversant. That's what's written, which I was why I was like, that's not actually a word I've seen before. Old English is weird and fucky and that's fine, right? A pale, taper faced man with sandy whiskers rose up from the chair by the fire as we entered. His age may not have been more than 3 or 4 and 30, but his haggard expression and unhealthy hue told of a life which had sapped his strength and robbed him of his youth. His manner was nervous and shy, like that of a sensitive gentleman, and the thin white hand which he laid upon the mantelpiece as he rose was that of an artist rather than of a surgeon. His dress was quiet and sombre, a black frock coat, dark trousers, and a touch of colour about his necktie. "Good evening, doctor," said Holmes cheerily. "I am glad to see that you have only been waiting a very few minutes." "You spoke to my coachman, then?" "No, it was the candle on the side table that told me. Pray resume your seat and let me know how I can serve you." "My name is Dr. Percy Trevelyan. 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 That's what I'm going with," said our visitor, "and I live at 403 Brook Street." I hope you have some very good sleep, Agadoo. I hope it's better than mine was. "Are you not the author of a monograph upon obscure nervous lesions?" I asked. His pale cheeks flushed with pleasure at hearing that his work was known to me. "I so seldom hear of the work that I thought it was quite dead," said he. "My publishers gave me a most discouraging account of its sale. You are yourself, I presume, a medical man?" "A retired army surgeon. My own hobby has always been a nervous disease. I should wish to make it an absolute specialty, but of course a man must take what he can get at first. This, however, is besides the question, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, and I quite appreciate how valuable your time is. The fact the fact is that a very singular train of events had occurred recently at my house in Brook Street, and tonight they came to such a head that I felt it was quite impossible for me to wait another hour before asking for your advice and assistance." Sherlock Holmes sat down and lit his pipe. "You are very welcome to both," said he. Pray let me have a detailed account of what the circumstances are which have disturbed you." Thank you for the hydrate, friend. Mm. "One or two of them are so trivial," said Dr. Trevelyan, "that I really am almost impossible? No, I am almost ashamed to mention them, for the matter is so inexplicable, and the recent turn which it has taken is so elaborate, that I shall lay it all before you, and you shall judge what is essential and what is not. I am compelled, to begin with, to say something of my own college career. I am a London University man, you know, and I am sure that you will not think that I am unduly singing my own praises if I say that my student career was considered by my professors to be a very promising one. After I had graduated, I continued to devote myself to research, occupying a minor position in the King's College Hospital, and I was fortunate enough to excite considerable interest by my research into the pathology of catalepsy, and finally to win the Bruce Pinkerton Prize and medal by the monograph on nervous lesions to which your friend has just alluded. I should not go too far if I were to say that there was a general impression at that time that a distinguished career lay before me." Oh my god, IDK. Reset the timer on the thing. How do I wait? So reset, there we go. But I will, because that's not something that should be on, and I keep forgetting that I need to change my channel point for stream stuff. You don't get that. You don't get DTS for this. Yeah. Alright. Where was I? There we go. But the one great stumbling block lay in my want of capital. As you will readily understand, a specialist who aims high is compelled to start in one of a dozen streets in the Cavendish Square quarter, all of which entail enormous rents and furnishing expenses. Thank you for the headpad. Mm. Besides this preliminary outlay, he must be prepared to keep himself for some years, and to hire a presentable carriage and horse. To do this was quite beyond my power, and I could only hope that by economy I might in 10 years' time save enough to enable me to put up my plate. Suddenly, however, an unexpected incident opened up quite a new prospect to me. Mm. This was a visit from a gentleman of the name of Blessington, who was a complete stranger to me. He came up to my room one morning and plunged into business in an instant. "You are the same Percy Trevelyan who has had so distinguished a career and won a great prize lately," said he, and I bowed. "Answer me frankly," he continued, "for you will find it to your interest to do so. You have all the cleverness which makes a successful man. Have you the tact?" I could not help smiling at the abruptness of the question. "I trust that I have my share," I said. "Any bad habits? Not drawn towards drink, eh?" "Really, sir," I cried. "Quite right. That's all right. But I was bound to ask. With all these qualities, why are you not in practice?" "Oh my God. Hell yeah, Sir Denzel. Congrats. And thanks for sticking around for 10 streams. That's insane." Thank you, thank you. I shrugged my shoulders. "Come, come," said he in his bustling way. "It's the old story. More in your brain than in your pocket, eh? What would you say if I were to start you in Brook Street?" I stared at him in astonishment. "Oh, it's for my sake, not for yours," he cried. "I'll be perfectly frank with you, and if it suits you, it will suit me very well. I have a few thousands to invest, you see, and I think I'll sink them in you." "Hi, Apocalyptic. Hello, welcome in. You having a good day today? I hope you are." Oh my god, 15 streams. That's insane. That's insane. I'm so happy. I feel very honored. Thank you. Okay. So. Show off. Didn't someone last stream reach like 20? Or am I making that up? Yeah, Eden's at a 20 streak. Enjoy being here. Oh, shucks. Where is it? There we go. "But why?" I gasped. "Well, it's just like any other speculation, and safer than most." "What am I to do then?" "I'll tell you. I'll take the house, furnish it, pay the maids, and run the whole place. All you have to do is just to wear out your chair in the consulting room. I'll let you have pocket money and everything. Then you hand over to me 3/4 of what you earn, and you keep the other quarter for yourself." This was the strange proposal, Mr. Holmes, with which the man Blessington approached me. I won't weary you with with the account of how we bargained and negotiated. It ended in my moving into the house next Lady Day, and starting in practice on very much the same conditions as he had suggested. He came himself to live with me in the character of a resident patient. His heart was weak, it appears, and he needed constant medical supervision. He turned the best rooms of the first floor into a sitting room and the bedroom for himself. He was a man of singular habits, shunning company and very seldom going out. His life was irregular, but in one respect he was regularity itself. Every evening at the same hour he walked into the consulting room, examined the books, put down 5 and 3 pence for every guinea that I had earned, and carried the rest off to the strong box in his own room. Hi, hi, hi. Thank you so much for the follow, Nelson. Welcome in, welcome in. I may say with confidence that he never had occasion to regret his speculation. From the first, it was a very success. A few good cases and the reputation which I had won in the hospital brought me rapidly to the front, and during the last few years I have made him a very rich man. So much, Mr. Holmes, for my past history and my relations with Mr. Bessington. It only remains for me now to tell you what has occurred to bring me here tonight. Some weeks ago, Mr. Blessington came down to me in, as it seemed to me, a state of considerable agitation. He spoke of some burglary which he said had been committed in the West End, and he appeared, I remember, to be quite unnecessarily excited about it, declaring that a day should not pass before we should add stronger bolts to our windows and doors. For a week he continued to be in a peculiar state of restlessness, peering continually out the windows and ceasing to take the short walk which had usually been the prelude to his dinner. From his manner it struck me that he was in mortal dread of something or somebody, but when I questioned him upon the point, he became so offensive that I was compelled to drop the subject. Gradually, as time passed, his fears appeared to die away, and he had renewed his former habits, when a fresh event reduced him to the pitiable state of prostration which he now lies. What happens was this. 2 days ago I received the letter which I now read to you. Neither address nor date is attached to it. A Russian nobleman, who is now resident in England, it runs, would be glad to avail himself of the professional assistance of Dr. Percy Trevelyan. He has been for some years a victim to the cataleptic attacks, on which is well known Dr. Trevelyan is an authority. He proposes to call at about 6:15 tomorrow evening, if Dr. Trevelyan will make it convenient to be at home. Oh gosh. But that's a very big stretch because my back was hurting. I'm gonna go to sleep while listening. Yeah, that's a good idea. I hope you have some very good sleep. Big stretch. Thank you for the hydrate. Hmm. This letter interested me deeply because the chief difficulty in the study of catalepsy is the rareness of the disease. You may believe, then, that when I was in my You may believe, then, that I was in my consulting room when, at the appointed hour, the page showed in the patient. He was an elderly man, thin, demure, and commonplace, by no means the conception one forms of a Russian nobleman. I was much more struck. Taylor, stop DMing me. I don't like seeing the notification bubble. I have to check. My curiosity won't let me not check. It's a very bad habit, I know. But I can't like not have Discord open either. So okay. I need to calm down. No, I can't close it. No. Okay, sorry. That was a. He was an elderly man, thin, demure, and commonplace, by no means the conception one forms of a Russian nobleman. I was much more struck by the appearance of his companion. And then he's respond to what I sent you. Okay, well, I'll respond later because that requires me to look at it. No, that's cool as fuck. It is cool as fuck. Oh, that's so cute. Oh my god. Okay. Yeah, that's cute as fuck. I'll respond properly later. I have thoughts. Anyway, I love that artist so much. Her work is always so good. Hmm. Is it? Okay, wait. I can switch my model back. Let me. She is super talented. It's actually insane. Oh, for fuck's sake, IDK. I give up. I give up on you guys. After. Oh my god. Okay, well. Where's my book? Where's my book? Thank you for the sketches. I'm so tired. Some of y'all have too many goddamn points, I swear. I need to up the points on the mascot at this rate. Um, okay, we're back to reading. This is a tall young man, surprisingly handsome, and with a dark, fierce face, and the limbs and chest of a Hercules. He had his hand under each other's arms as they entered, and helped him to a chair with a tenderness which one would hardly have expected from his appearance. Friend, I know you're not broke. Don't even try to lie to me. You have so many goddamn points right now. Motherfucker, you have been here for like forever at this rate. How long have you been here? What's your thing? When do you follow? Thank you for the sketches. Hmm. You will excuse my coming in, doctor, said he to me, speaking English with a slight lisp. This is my father, and his health is a matter of the most overwhelming importance to me. I was touched by this filial anxiety. You would perhaps care to remain during the consultation, said I. Not for the world, he cried with a gesture of horror. It is most painful to me than I can express. If I were to see my father in one of these dreadful seizures, I am convinced that I should never survive it. My own nervous system is an exceptionally sensitive one. With your permission, I will remain in the waiting room while you go into my father's case. To this, of course, I assented. The young man withdrew. The patient and I then plunged into a discussion of his case, of which I took exhaustive notes. He was not remarkable for intelligence, and his answers were frequently obscure, which I attributed to his limited acquaintance with our language. Suddenly, however, as I sat writing, he ceased to give any answer at all to my inquiries, and on my turning towards him, I was shocked to see that he was sitting bolt upright in my chair with a perfectly blank and rigid face. He was again in the grip of his mysterious malady. My first feeling, as I have just said, was one of pity and horror. My second, I fear, was rather one of professional satisfaction. I made notes of my patient's pulse and temperature, tested the rigidity of his muscles, and examined his reflexes. There was nothing markedly abnormal in any of these conditions, which harmonized with my former experiences. I had obtained good results in such cases by the inhalation of nitrate of amyl, and the present seemed to be an admirable opportunity of testing its virtues. The bottle was downstairs in my laboratory, so leaving my patient seated in his chair, I ran down to get it. There was some delay in finding it, 5 minutes, let us say, and then I returned. Imagine my amazement to find the room empty and the patient gone. So, like, it's just a scam, isn't it? I'm convinced it's some kind of scam. Ow. Okay. Of course, my first act was to run into the waiting room. The sun had gone also. The hall door had been closed, but not shut. My page who admits patients is a new boy and by no means quick. He waits downstairs and runs up to show patients out when I ring the consulting room bell. He had heard nothing, and the affair remained a complete mystery. Mr. Blessington came from his walk shortly afterwards, but I did not say anything to him upon the subject, for, to tell the truth, I have got in the way of late, of holding as little communication with him as possible. Well, I never thought that I should see anything more of the Russian and his son, so you can imagine my surprise, my amazement, when at the very same hour this evening they both came marching into my consulting room just as they had done before. I feel that I owe you a great many apologies for my abrupt departure yesterday, doctor, said my patient. I confess that I was very much surprised at it, said I. Well, the fact is, he remarked, that when I recover from these attacks, my mind is always very clouded as to all that has gone before. I woke up in a strange room, as it seemed to me, and made my way out into the street in sort of a dazed way when you were absent. And I, said the son, seeing my father pass the door of the waiting room, naturally thought that the consultation had come to an end. It was not until we had reached home that I began to realize the true state of affairs. Oh, well, said I, laughing, there is no harm done except that you puzzled me terribly. So if you, sir, would kindly step into the waiting room, I shall be happy to continue our consultation, which has brought to such an to so which was brought to so abrupt an ending. What the but the There we go. Nope, I've lost chat. There we go. For half an hour or so, I discussed that old gentleman's symptoms with him, and then, having prescribed for him, I saw him go off upon the arm of his son. I have told you that Mr. Blessington generally chose this hour of the day for his exercise. He came in shortly afterwards and passed upstairs. An instant later I heard him running down, and he burst into my consulting room like a man who was mad with panic. We're lost. Why are you scared? Oh, I get it now. No, I found you guys, don't worry. You followed about a month and a half ago. As a friend, you could have just. Yeah, you're found. But also, that's insane that you've only been around for a month and a half. Again, it feels like you've been here forever. Oh, wow. It really does feel to me like I've been streaming for longer than I have as well. It's not even been half a year, I don't think. I think I started in December, I believe. Oh my god. Nice. A month for you too, Apocalyptic. Hell yeah. Mm. You can't flex, Sailor, because you unfollowed me, remember? And then followed me back. So yours should be longer, technically. That's not even as good of a flex as it could have been. Wait, I'm gonna. I think Boobo has a longer follow age than you do now, technically. The drama, for real. It's not even drama. Sailor just wanted to be my 100th follower. It's so silly. Hi, Saya. Hi, hi, hi. Welcome in. That's why Sailor has VIP. I think I have like three VIPs. One of them's a friend of mine. One of them's Sailor. And the other's Taku because he's just a fucking Nuzlocke coach. Okay. Back to reading. Oh my god, everybody is doing 2 months and 7 days. Oh my god. I like that there's two different messages popping up. Because Stream Elements is doing it, and I think Mix It Up is trying to do it as well. Can I turn it off and mix it up? 'Cause- Okay, I'm gonna turn that off and mix it up. So there's not like 500 messages. How long has Agadu been following? A month and 15 days? Hell yeah. It shouldn't work for mods. Good. Right. Where was I? We need to read. We have things to do. Can I change my model back, or are you guys gonna do the mascot again? Oh my god, 3 whole months. Wow. Nice, nice, nice. Thanks, Sailor. Does it say 4 when you click my name? I have no idea. That's probably some Twitch weirdness. Yeah. Hmm. Maybe you missed a month or something in the middle. I don't know. Can I be a fairy again? What's your favorite food? Ice cream. I know that's not a food, but ice cream. I love ice cream. Oh, fuck's sake. My model hasn't even loaded in yet. You guys are mean. I am being tortured at this point, forced to stay in this tiny form. God. You want a little guy? Here, have a little guy. He's little and small, and the pages are too big for him to turn himself. True form? No. I am not little and floofy. I am tall and cute. Oh my god. I'm being tortured. This is fine. They are bullies, apocalyptic, they are. Okay. Okay, reading. I am not 2 inches tall, I am 5 inches tall, thank you very much. There. What the fuck are you doing? What is with these suspicious questions, huh? Don't distract me, I'm distracted enough. If you want to keep distracting me, I'm gonna get something to eat. Have some leftover pizza from last night. Where was I? Has I read that paragraph? I don't remember. Okay, okay. Reading. Also, my favorite number is 3. I love the number 3. I have told you that Mr. Blessington generally chose this hour of the day for his exercise. He came in shortly afterwards and passed upstairs. An instant later, I heard him running down, and he burst into my consulting room like a man who was mad with panic. Chicken nuggies. I want chicken nuggies. I hope you enjoy your chicken nuggies. Also, I don't have a favorite TV channel. Who watches TV channels anymore? It used to be Disney when I was growing up, but I haven't watched like normal TV in a long ass time. Oh no, your neck's hurting, Agadoo. That sucks for real. My shoulders are killing me because I had to do push ups yesterday. And like, that is muscles that I have literally, I don't think, ever used in my life. No. Who has been in my room? He cried. No one, said I. Thank you for the bed. It's a lie, he yelled. Come up and look. I passed over the grossness of his language as he seemed half out of his mind with fear. When I went upstairs with him, he pointed to several footprints upon the light carpet. Do you mean to say that those are mine? He cried. They were definitely very much larger than any which he could have made, and were evidently quite fresh. It rained hard this afternoon, as you know, and my patients were the only people who called. It must have been the case, then, that the man in the waiting room had, for some unknown reason, while I was busy with the other, ascended to the room of my resident patient. Nothing had been touched or taken, but there were the footprints to prove that the intrusion was undoubted fact. What are you? Why are you snooping through my room, sailor? What you're trying to look for? Mr. Blessington seemed more excited over the matter than I should have thought possible, though of course it was enough to disturb anybody's peace of mind. Inky with his kitties. He actually sat crying in an armchair, and I could hardly get him to speak coherently. It was his suggestion that I should come round to you, and of course I at once saw the propriety of it, for certainly the incident is a very singular one, though he appears to completely overrate its importance. If you'd only come back with me in my brougham, you would at least be able to soothe him, though I can hardly hope that you will be able to explain this remarkable occurrence. Nice, Sue. Nice. Oh, you were looking for my love? Well, you're not gonna get it. I can't. Don't watch me while I sleep. That's that's too many people watching me while I sleep at this point. I, I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna say what I was thinking. Anyways, Team Jacob, no, no, no. Team Bella should get a divorce and live her on her own. Hmm. Sherlock Holmes had listened to this long narrative with an intentness which showed me that his interest was keenly aroused. His face was as impassive as ever, but his lids had drooped more heavily over his eyes, and his smoke had curled up more thickly from his pipe to emphasize each curious episode in the doctor's tale. As our visitor concluded, Holmes sprang up without a word, handed me my hat, picked his own from the table, and followed Dr. Trevelyan to the door. Within a quarter of an hour, we had dropped at the door of the physician's residence in Book Street, one of the sombre, flat-faced houses which one associates with a West End practice. A small page admitted us, and we began at once to ascend the broad, well-carpeted stair. But a singular interruption brought us to stand still. The light at the top was suddenly whisked out, and from the darkness came a reedy, quick, quivering voice. "I have a pistol," it cried. "I give you my word that I'll fire if you come any nearer." "This really grows outrageous, Mr. Blessington," cried Dr. Trevelyan. "Oh, then it is you, doctor," said the gentleman, and said the voice with a great heave of relief. "But those other gentlemen, are they what they pretend to be?" We were conscious of a long scrutiny out of the darkness. "Yes, yes, it's all right," said the voice at last. "You can come up, and I am sorry if my precautions have annoyed you." He relit the stair gas as he spoke, and we saw before us a singular looking man, whose appearance as well as his voice testified to his jangled nerves. He was very fat, but it had apparently at some time been much fatter, so that the skin hung about his face in loose pouches like the cheeks of a bloodhound. He was of a sickly colour, and his thin sandy hair seemed to bristle up with the intensity of his emotion. In his hand he held a pistol, but he thrust it into his pocket as we advanced. I will say, I think vampires are more fun than werewolves. "Good evening, Mr. Holmes," said he. "I am sure that I am very much obliged to you for coming round. No one ever needed your service more than I do. I suppose Dr. Trevelyan has told you of this most unwarrantable intrusion into my rooms?" "Quite so," said Holmes. Who are these two men, Mr. Blessington, and why do they wish to molest you?" "Yep." "Well, well," said the resident patient in a nervous fashion. "Of course it is hard to say that. You can hardly expect me to answer that, Mr. Holmes." "Do you mean that you don't know? Come in here if you just please. Just have the kindness to step in here." "Good night, Dawn. I hope you have some very good sleep." He led the way into his bedroom, which was large and comfortably furnished. "You see that?" said he, pointing to a big black box at the end of his bed. I've never been a very rich man, Mr. Holmes, never made but one investment in my life, as Dr. Trevelyan would tell you. But I don't believe in bankers, and I would never trust a banker, Mr. Holmes. Between ourselves, what little I have is in that box, so you can understand what it means to me when unknown people force themselves into my rooms. Holmes looked at Blessington in his questioning way and shook his head. I cannot possibly advise you if you try to deceive me, said he, but I have told you everything. Holmes turned on his heel with a gesture of disgust. Good night, Miss Dr. Trevelyan, said he. And no advice for me, cried Blessington in a breaking voice. My advice to you, sir, is to speak the truth. A minute later we were in the street and walking for home. We had crossed Oxford Street and were halfway down Harley Street before I could get a word from my companion. Sorry to bring you out on such a fool's errand, Watson, he said at last. It's an interesting case, too, at the bottom of it. I can make little of it, I confess. Well, it is quite evident that there are two men, more perhaps, but at least two, who are determined for some reason to get at this fellow Blessington. I have no doubt in my mind that both on the first and on the second occasion that young man penetrated to Blessington's room while his confederate, by an ingenious device, kept the doctor from interfering. And the catalepsy? A fraudulent imitation, Watson, though I should hardly dare to hint as much to our specialist. It is very easy complaint to imitate. I have done it myself. And then, by the purest chance, Blessington was out on each occasion. The reason for choosing so unusual an hour for a consultation was obviously to ensure that there should be no other patient in the waiting room. It just happened, however, that this hour coincided with Blessington Constitutional, which seemed to show that they were not very well acquainted with his routine. Thank you for the hydrate, friend. Mm. Of course, if they had been merely after plunder, they would have at least made some attempt to search for it. Besides, I can read in a man's eye when it is his own skin that he is frightened for. It is inconceivable that this fellow could have made two such vindictive enemies as these appear to be, without knowing of it. I hold it, therefore, to be certain that he does know who these men are, and that, for reasons of his own, he suppresses it. It is just possible that tomorrow may find him in a more communicative mood. Oh, gosh. The sleepy bug. Is there not one alternative? I suggested. Grotesquely improbable, no doubt, but still just conceivable. Might the whole story of the cataleptic Russian and his son be a concoction of Dr. Trevelyan's, who has, for his own purposes, been in Blessington's rooms? I saw in the gaslight that Holmes wore an amused smile at this brilliant departure of mine. Thank you for the sketches. And I have passed. My dear fellow, said he, it was one of the first solutions which occurred to me, but I soon was able to corroborate the doctor's tale. This young man has left prints upon the stair carpet, which made it quite superfluous for me to ask to see which he had made in the room. When I tell you that his shoes were square-toed instead of being pointed like Blessington's, and were quite an inch and a third longer than the doctor's, you will acknowledge that there can be no doubt as to his individuality. But we may sleep on it now, for I shall be surprised if we do not hear something further from Brook Street in the morning. Sherlock Holmes' prophecy was soon fulfilled, and in a dramatic fashion. At 7:30 next morning, in the first glimmer of daylight, I found him standing by my bedside in his dressing gown. There's a brougham waiting for us, Watson, said he. What's the matter, then? The Brook Street business. Any fresh news? Tragic, but ambiguous, said he, pulling up a blind. Look at this, a sheet from a notebook, with "For God's sake, come at once, P.T." scrawled upon it in pencil. Our friend, the doctor, was hard put to when he wrote this. Come along, dear fellow, for it is an urgent call. In a quarter of an hour or so, we were back at the Fisherson's house. He came running out to meet us with a face of horror. "Oh, such business!" he cried with his hands to his temples. "What then?" "Lessington has committed suicide." Holmes whistled. "Yes, he hanged himself during the night." We had entered, and the doctor had preceded us into what was evidently his waiting room. "I really hardly know what I am doing," he cried. "The police are already upstairs. It has shaken me more dreadfully." "When did you find out?" "Find out? He has a cup of tea taken to him early every morning. When the maid entered, about 7, there the unfortunate fellow was hanging in the middle of the room. He had tied his cord on the hook on which the heavy lamp used to hang, and he had jumped up from the top of the very box you showed us yesterday." Holmes stood for a moment in deep thought. "With your permission," he said at last, "I should like to go upstairs and look into the matter." We both ascended, followed by the doctor. It was a dreadful sight which met us as we passed the bedroom door. I have spoken of the impression of flabbiness which this man Blessington conveyed. As he dangled from the hook, it was exaggerated and intensified until he was scarce human in his appearance. He was clad only in his long night-dress, and his swollen ankles and ungainly feet protruded starkly from beneath it. Beside him stood a smart-looking police inspector who was taking notes in a pocket-book. "Good morning, Lanner. No, wait. Ah, Mr. Holmes," said he heartily as my friend entered. "I am delighted to see you." "Good morning, Lanner," answered Holmes. "You won't think me an intruder, I am sure. Have you heard of the events which led up to this affair?" "Yes, I heard something of them." "Have you formed an opinion?" "As far as I can see, the man has been driven out of his senses by fright. The bed has been well slept in, you see. There's his impression deep enough. It's about 5 in the morning, you know, that suicides are most common. That would be about his time for hanging himself. It seems to have been a very deliberate affair." "I should say that he has been dead about 3 hours, judging by the rigidity of his muscles," said I. "Noticed anything peculiar about the room?" said Holmes. "Found a screwdriver and some screws on the wash-hand stand. Seems to have smoked heavily during the night, too. There are 4 cigar ends that I picked out of the fireplace." "Hmm," said Holmes. "Have you got his cigar holder?" "No, I have seen none." "Eden, stop winning the raffles that you are hosting." "That's not fair." "No, I have seen none." "His cigar case, then?" "Yes, it was in his coat pocket." Holmes opened it and smelled the single cigar which it contained. "Oh, this is an Havana. These other cigars are of the peculiar sort which are imported by the Dutch from their East Indian colonies. They are usually wrapped in straw, you know, and are thinner for their length than any other brand." He picked up the 4 ends and examined them with his pocket lens. "2 of these have been smoked from a holder and 2 without," said he. "2 have been cut by a not very sharp knife, and 2 have had the ends bitten off by a set of excellent teeth. This is no suicide, Mr. Lanner. It is a very deeply planned and cold-blooded murder." "Impossible!" cried the inspector. "And why? Why should anyone murder a man in so clumsy a fashion as by hanging him? That is what we have to find out. How could they get in? Through the front door. It was barred in the morning, then it was barred after them. How do you know?" "I saw their traces. Excuse me a moment, and I may be able to give you some further information about it." He went over to the door, and turning the lock he examined it in his methodical way. Then he took out the key, which was on the inside, and inspected that also. The bed, the carpet, the chairs, the mantelpiece, the dead body, and the rope were each in turn examined, until at last he professed himself satisfied, and with my aid and that of the inspector cut down the wretched object and laid it reverently under a sheet. Hey, my sweetie. I hope you have good sleep. Thank you for lurking. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for the hydrate. Hmm? Time for a big stretch. Thank you. He went over to the door and turning the lock, he examined it in his methodical way. Then he. Oh, no, never mind, I've read all of that. Okay. How about the rope? He asked. It is cut off of this, said Dr. Trevelyan, drawing a large coil from under the bed. He was morbidly nervous of fire and always kept this beside him, so that he may escape by the window in case the stairs were burning. That must have saved them the trouble, said Holmes thoughtfully. Yes, the actual facts are plain, and I shall be surprised if by the afternoon I cannot give you all the reasons for them as well. I will take this photograph of Blessington, which I see upon the mantelpiece, as it may help me in my inquiries. But you have told us nothing, cried the doctor. Oh, there can be no doubt as to the sequence of events, said Holmes. There were three of them in it, the young man, the old man, and a third, to whose identity I have no clue. The first two, I need hardly remark, are the same who masqueraded as the Russian Count and his son, so we can give a very full description of them. They were admitted by a confederate inside the house. If I might offer you a word of advice, Inspector, it would be to arrest the page, who, as I understand, has only recently come into your service, Doctor. The young imp cannot be found, said Dr. Trevelyan. The maid and the cook have just been searching for him. Holmes shrugged his shoulders. He has played a not unimportant part in this drama, said he. The three men have ascended the stairs, which they did on tiptoe, the elder man first, the younger man second, and the unknown man in the rear. My dear Mr. Holmes, I ejaculated. They're not getting away from the gay allegations, I swear. Oh, there could be no question as to the superimposing of the footmarks. I had the advantage of learning which was last night. They ascended then to Mr. Blessington's room, with the door of which they found to be locked. With the help of a wire, however, they forced round the key. Even without the lens, you will perceive by the scratches in this ward where the pressure was applied. On entering the room, their first proceeding must have been to gag Mr. Blessington. He may have been asleep, or he may have been so paralyzed with terror as to have been unable to cry out. These walls are thick, and it is conceivable that his shriek, if he had time to utter one, was unheard. Having secured him, it is evident to me that a consultation of some sort was held. Probably it was something in the nature of a judicial proceeding. It must have lasted for some time, for it was then these cigars were smoked. The older man sat in that wicker chair. It was he who used the cigar holder. The younger man sat over yonder. He knocked his ash off against the chest of drawers. The third fellow paced up and down. Blessington, I think, sat upright in the bed, but of that I cannot be absolute certain. Well, it ended by their taking Blessington and hanging him. The matter was so prearranged that it is my belief they brought with them some sort of block or pulley which might serve as gallows. The screwdriver and those screws were, as I conceive, fixing it up. Seeing the hook, however, they naturally saved themselves the trouble. Having finished their work, they made off, and the door was barred behind them by their confederate. We had all listened with the deepest interest to this sketch of the night's doings, which Holmes had deduced from signs so subtle and minute that even when he had pointed them out to us, we could scarcely follow him in his reasoning. The inspector hurried away on the instant to make inquiries about the page, while Holmes and I returned to Baker Street for breakfast. I'll be back by 3, said he, when we had finished our meal. Both the inspector and the doctor will meet me here at that hour, and I hope that by that time to have cleared up any little obscurity which the case may still present. Our visitors arrived at the appointed time, but it was 3:15 before my friend put in appearance. From his expression as he entered, however, I could see that all had gone well with him. Any news, Inspector? We have got the boy, sir. Excellent. And I have got the men. You have got them, we cried all three. Well, at least I have got their identity. This so-called Blessington is, as I suspected, well known at headquarters, and so are his assailants. Their names are Biddle, Hayford, and Moffat. The Worthington Bank gang, cried the inspector. Precisely, said Holmes. Then Blessington must have been Sutton. Exactly, said Holmes. Why, that makes it as clear as crystal, said the inspector. But Trevelyan and I looked at each other in bewilderment. You must surely remember the great Worthington Bank business, said Holmes. 5 men were in it, these four, and a fifth called Cartwright. Tobin, the caretaker, was murdered, and the thieves got away with £7,000. This was in 1875. They were all 5 arrested, but the evidence against them was by no means conclusive. This Blessington, or Sutton, who was the worst of the gang, turned informer. On his evidence, Cartwright was hanged, and the other three got 15 years apiece. When they got out the other day, which was some years before their full term, they set themselves, as you perceive, to hunt down the traitor, and to avenge the death of their comrade upon them. Twice they tried to get him and failed. The third time, you see, it came off. Is there anything further which I can explain, Dr. Trevelyan? I think you have made it all remarkably clear, said the doctor. No doubt the day on which he was perturbed was the day when we had seen of their release in the newspapers. Quite so. His talk about a burglary was the merest blind. But why could he not tell you this? Well, my dear sir, knowing the vindictive character of his old associates, he was trying to hide his own identity from everybody as long as he could. His secret was a shameful one, and he could not bring himself to divulge it. However, wretch as he was still living under the shield of British law, and I have no doubt, Inspector, that you will see that, though the shield may fail to guard, the sword of justice is still there to avenge. Such were the singular circumstances in connection with the resident patient and the Brook Street doctor. From that night nothing has been seen of the 3 murderers by the police, and it is surmised at Scotland Yard that they were amongst the passengers of the ill-fated steamer Nora Creina, which was lost some years ago with all hands upon the Portuguese coast, some leagues to the north of Oporto. The proceeding against the page broke down for want of evidence, and the Brook Street mystery, as it was called, has never until now, been fully dealt with in any public print. And that's the story of the resident patient. Ooh. Ooh. Beast. And I think that will be the end of stream, perhaps? Or do we want to read another? Because I'll be streaming again later tonight, so I don't want to use up all of my energy. I like being little, it's cute. I'm just a little guy. That was lovely, thank you. I feel like every time that I stream ASMR, I sound slightly different because I can never remember what kind of voice to put on. But I like what today is. As long as I'm sleepy, I think I can do it good. Nuggies aren't ready yet. No. Let's read another story then. I'm sure if Sailor is not here to distract me, that I can get through another story. Right. What do we have next? I think you sound very pleasant to listen to. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Uh, The second story we have the Greek interpreter. During my long and intimate acquaintance with Mr. Sherlock Holmes, I had never heard him refer to his relations, and hardly ever to his own early life. This reticence upon his part had increased the somewhat inhuman effect which he produced upon me, until sometimes I found myself regarding him as an isolated phenomenon, a brain without a heart, as deficient in human sympathy as he was preeminent in intelligence. His aversion to women and his disinclination to form new friendships were both typical of his unemotional character. But not more so than his complete suppression of every reference to his own people. I had come to believe that he was an orphan with no relative living, but one day, to my very great surprise, he began to talk to me about his brother. Yes, Mycroft. Mycroft appears. Yeah. I love Sherlock Holmes. I love these stories. Oh no. Oh god, there we go. Okay. It was after tea on a summer evening, and the conversation, which had roamed in a desultory, spasmodic fashion from golf clubs to the causes of change in the obliquity of the ecliptic, came round at last to the question of atavism and hereditary aptitudes. The point under discussion was how far any singular gift in an individual was due to his ancestry and how far to his own early training. In your case, said I, from all that you have told me, it seems obvious that your faculty of observation and your peculiar facility for deduction are due to your own systematic training. To some extent, he answered thoughtfully. My ancestors were country squires who appear to have led much the same life as is natural to their class. But none the less, my turn that way is in my veins, and may have come with my grandmother, who was the sister of Vernet, the French artist. Art is in the blood, is liable to take the strangest forms. But how do you know that it is hereditary? Because my brother Mycroft possesses it in a larger degree than I do. Oh, oh, this was news to me indeed. There were another man with such singular powers in England. How was it that neither the police nor public had heard of him? IDK, I swear to God, I am going to murder you. Let me be normal. Anyways, okay. This was news to me indeed. There were another man with such singular powers in England. How was it that neither police nor public had heard of him? I put the question, with a hint that it was my companion's modesty which made him acknowledge his brother as his superior. Holmes laughed at my suggestion. My dear Watson, said he, I cannot agree with those who rank modesty amongst the virtues. To the logician, all things should be seen exactly as they are, and to underestimate one's self is as much a departure from truth as to exaggerate one's own powers. When I say, therefore, that Mycroft has better powers of observation than I, you may take it that I am speaking the exact and literal truth. Is he your junior? 7 years my senior. How come it is that he is unknown? Oh, he's very he is very well known in his own circle. Where then? Well, in the Diogenes Club, for example. I had never heard of the institution, and my face must have proclaimed as much, but Sherlock Holmes pulled out his watch. The Diogenes Club is the queerest club in London, and Mycroft one of the queerest men. He's always there from 5:15 to 8:20. It's 6 now. If you care for a stroll to this beautiful evening, I shall very happily introduce you to two curiosities. 5 minutes later, we were in the street, walking towards Regent Circus. You wonder, said my companion, why it is that Mycroft does not use his powers for detective work. He is incapable of it. But I thought that you said, I said that he was my superior in observation and deduction. If the art of the detective began and ended in reasoning from an armchair, my brother would have been the greatest criminal agent that ever lived. But he has no ambition and no energy. He will not even go out of his way to verify his own solution, and would rather be considered wrong than to take the trouble to prove himself right. Again and again I have taken a problem to him, and have received an explanation which is afterward proved to be the correct one. And yet he was absolutely incapable of working out the practical points which must be gone into before a case could be laid before a judge or a jury. It is not his profession, then? By no means. What is to me as a means of livelihood is to him the merest of a hobby of a dilettante. He has an extraordinary faculty for figures, and audits the books in some of the government departments. Mycroft lodges in Pall Mall, and he walks round the corner to Whitehall every morning and back every evening. From year's end to year's end he takes no other exercise, and is seen nowhere else, except only in the Diogenes Club, which is just opposite his rooms. I cannot recall the name. Very likely not. There are many men in London, you know, who some from shyness, some from misanthropy, have no wish for the company of their fellows, yet they are not averse to comfortable chairs and the latest periodicals. It is for the convenience of these that the Diogenes Club was started, and it now contains the most unsociable and unclubbable men in London. No member is permitted to take the least notice of any other one. Save in this stranger's room, no talking is, under any circumstances, allowed, and three offences, if brought to the notice of the committee, render the talker liable to expulsion. My brother was one of the founders, and I have found it a very soothing atmosphere. We had reached Pall Mall as we talked, and were walking down it from St. James's End. Sherlock Holmes stopped at a door some little distance from the Carlton, cautioning me not to speak, he led the way into the hall. Through the gas panelling, I caught a glimpse of a large and luxurious room, in which a considerable number of men were sitting about and reading papers, each in his own little nook. Holmes showed me into a small chamber which looked out into Pall Mall, and then, leaving me for a minute, he came back with a companion whom I knew could only be his brother. Hi, hi, hi. Thank you in for the. What? No, that's not what I say. Welcome in, and thank you for the follow. Alvaro, I appreciate it. And hi, Finn. How you doing? Hope you're doing well. Bread indeed. Mycroft Holmes was a much larger and stouter man than Sherlock. His body was absolutely corpulent. His face, though massive, had preserved something of the sharpness of expression which was so remarkable in that of his brother. His eyes, which were of a peculiarly light, watery grey, seemed to always retain that far-away, introspective look which I had only observed in Sherlock's when he was exerting his full power. "I am glad to meet you, sir," said he, putting out a broad, fat hand like the flipper of a seal. "I hear of Sherlock's everywhere since you became his chronicler. By the way, Sherlock, I expected to see you round last week to consult me over that Manor House case. I thought you might be a little out of your depth." "No, I solved it," said my friend, smiling. It was Adams, of course. Yes, it was Adams. I was sure of it from the first. The two sat down together in the bow window of the club. To anyone who wishes to study mankind, this is the spot, said Mycroft. Look at the magnificent types. Look at these two men who are coming towards us, for example. The billiard marker and the other. Precisely. What do you make of the other? The two men had stopped opposite the window. Some chalk marks over the waistcoat pocket were the only signs of billiards which I could see in one of them. The other was a very small, dark fellow, with his hat pushed back and several packages under the arm. An old soldier, I perceive, said Sherlock. And very recently discharged, remarked the brother. Served in India, I see. Then a non-commissioned officer. Royal Artillery, I fancy, said Sherlock. And a widower, but with child. Children, my dear boy, children. Come, said I, laughing. This is a little too much. Surely, answered Holmes. It is not hard to say that a man with that bearing, expression of authority, and sun-baked skin is a soldier, is more than a private, and is not long from India. That he has not left the service long is shown by his still wearing his ammunition boots, as they are called, observed Mycroft. He had not the cavalry stride, yet he wore his hat on one side, as is shown by the lighter skin of that side of his brow. His weight is against his being a sapper. He is in the artillery. Then, of course, his complete mourning shows that he has lost someone very dear. The fact that he is doing his own shopping looks as though it were his wife. He has been buying things for children, you perceive. There is a rattle, which shows that one of them is very young. The wife probably died in childbed. The fact that he has a picture book under his arm shows that there is another child to be thought of. I began to understand what my friend meant when he said that his brother possessed even keener faculties than he did himself. He glanced across at me and smiled. Mycroft took snuff from this tortoise-shell box and brushed away the wandering grains from his coat front with a large red silk handkerchief. By the way, Sherlock, said he, I have had something quite after your own heart, a most singular problem, submitted to my judgment. I really had not the energy to follow it up, save in a very incomplete fashion, but it gave me a basis for some pleasing speculation, if you would care to hear the facts. My dear Mycroft, I should be delighted. Oh, God. Sleep. I'm getting eepy doing my own readings. This always happens with ASMR. That's why I can't do them in the middle of the day, because I get too tired. Because I'll probably take another nap after the stream. The brother scribbled a note upon a leaf of his pocketbook, and, ringing the bell, he handed it to the waiter. I've asked Mr. Millas to step across, said he. He lodges on the floor above me, and I have some slight acquaintance with him, which led him to come to me in his perplexity. Mr. Millas is a Greek by extraction, as I understand, and he is a remarkable linguist. He earns his living partly as an interpreter in the law courts, and partly by acting as a guide to any wealthy Orientals who may visit the Northumberland Avenue hotels. I think I will leave him to tell his very remarkable experience in his own fashion. A few minutes later we were joined by a short, stout man, whose olive face and coal-black hair proclaimed his southern origin, though his speech was that of an educated Englishman. He shook hands eagerly with Sherlock Holmes, and his dark eyes sparkled with pleasure when he understood that the specialist was anxious to hear his story. I do not believe the police credit me. On my word, I do not, he said in a wailing voice. Just because I have never heard of it before, they think that such a thing cannot be. But I know that I shall never be easy in my mind until I know what has become of my poor man with the sticking plaster upon his face. I am all attention, said Sherlock Holmes. This Wednesday evening, said Mr. Millas, when Lun. This is Wednesday evening, said Mr. Millas. Well then, it was Monday night. Only 2 days ago, you understand, that all this happened. I am an interpreter, as perhaps my neighbor there has told you. I interpret all languages, or nearly all, but as I am a Greek by birth and with a Grecian name, it is with that particular tongue that I am principally associated. For many years I have been the chief Greek interpreter in London, and my name is very well known in hotels. Hi, 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 welcome. Thank you so much for the follow. Is that pronounced G-Roy or Leroy? Not Leroy, that's the wrong, not even the right fucking letter. Oh my god. G-Roy or Giroy? Or am I just saying it completely wrong? Hmm. Um, it happens not unfrequently. Leroy. Okay, so I did get it correct. Leroy like Leroy, but with a G. Hi, welcome in. Oh, where was I? Okay. It happens not unfrequently that I am sent for strange hours by foreigners who get into difficulties, or by travellers who arrive late and wish my services. I was not surprised, therefore, on Monday night when a Mr. Latimer, very fashionably dressed young man, came up to my rooms and asked me to accompany him in a cab which was waiting at the door. A Greek friend had come to see him upon business, he said, and he could speak nothing but his own tongue. The services of an interpreter were indispensable. He gave me to understand that his house was some little distance off, in Kensington, and he seemed to be in a great hurry, bustling me rapidly into the cab when we had descended to the street. Hi, 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 thank you for the follow. Welcome in, Nick Drag, welcome. I lost my spot. Mm-hmm. Okay. I say into the cab, but I soon became doubtful as to whether it was not a carriage in which I found myself. It was certainly more roomy than the ordinary four-wheeled disgrace to London, and the fittings, though frayed, were of rich quality. Mr. Latimer seated himself opposite to me, and we started off through Charing Cross and up the Shaftesbury Avenue. We had come out upon Oxford Street, and I had ventured some remark as to this being a roundabout way to Kensington, when my words were arrested by the extraordinary conduct of my companion. He began by drawing a most formidable-looking bludgeon loaded with lead from his pocket, and switching it backwards and forwards several times, as if to test its weight and strength. Then he placed it without a word upon the seats beside him. Having done this, he drew up the windows on each side, and I found, to my astonishment, that they were covered with paper so as to prevent my seeing through them. What the fuck? What is happening? Oh my god. Hey? Hi. Thank you so much for the follow. Twitch Boss Bloom. Welcome in, welcome in. Oh my god. Ow, my nose. Your chicken nuggets are ready? Hell yeah. I hope you enjoy them. I'm very jealous and also really want chicken nuggets too. Oh, okay. I am sorry to cut off your view, Mr. Milas, said he. The fact is that I have no intention that you should see the place which we are driving. It might possibly be inconvenient to me if you could find your way there again. As you can imagine, I was utterly taken aback by such an address. My companion was a powerful, broad-shouldered young fellow, and, apart from the weapon, I should not have the slightest chance in a struggle with him. This is a very extraordinary conduct, Mr. Latimer, I stammered. You must be aware that what you're doing is quite illegal. It is somewhat of a liberty, no doubt, said he, but we'll make it up to you. I must warn you, however, Mr. Maillard, that if at any time tonight you attempt to raise an alarm or do anything which is against my interests, you will find it a very serious thing. I beg you to remember that no one knows where you are, and that, whether you are in this carriage or in my house, you are equally in my power. His words were quiet, but he had a rasping way of saying them which was very menacing. I sat in silence wondering what on earth could be his reason for kidnapping me in this extraordinary fashion. Whatever it might be, it was perfectly clear that there was no possible use in my resisting, and that I could only wait to see what might befall. My nose is itchy. For nearly 2 hours we drove without my having the least clue to where we were going. Sometimes the rattle of the stones told of a paved causeway, and at other our smooth silent course suggested asphalt. But, save by this variation in sound, there was nothing at all which could in the remotest way help me to form a guess as to where we were. The paper over each window was impenetrable to light, and a blue curtain was drawn across the glass work in front. It was 7:15 when we left Pall Mall, and my watch showed me it was 10 minutes to 9 when we came across a standstill, or came to a standstill. My companion let down the window, and I caught a glimpse of a low arched doorway with a lamp burning above. As I was hurried from the carriage, it swung open, and I found myself inside the house, with a vague impression of lawn and trees on each side of me as I entered. Whether these were private grounds, however, or bona fide country, was more than I could possibly venture to say. There was a colored glass lamp inside, which was turned so low that I could see little save that the hall was of some size and hung with pictures. In the dim light, I could make out that the person who had opened the door was a small, mean-looking, middle-aged man with rounded shoulders. Soldiers? No, shoulders. As he turned towards us, the glint of the light showed me that he was wearing glasses. "Is this Mr. Melas, Harold?" said he. "Yes." "Well done, well done. No ill will, Mr. Melas, I hope. We could not get on without you. If you deal fair with us, you'll not regret it. But if you try any tricks, God help you." Spoke in a nervous, jerky fashion, and with little giggling laughs in between. But somehow he impressed me with fear more than the other. "What do you want with me?" I asked. "Only to ask a few questions of a Greek gentleman who was visiting us, and to let us have the answers. But say no more than you are told to say, or," here came the nervous giggle again, "you had better never have been born." Oh gosh, I'm so sleepy. There we go. As he spoke, he opened a door and showed the way into a room which appeared to be very richly furnished, but again the only light was afforded by a single lamp half turned down. The chamber was certainly large, and the way in which my feet sank into the carpet as I stepped across it told me of its richness. I caught glimpses of velvet chairs, a high white marble mantelpiece, and what seemed to be a suit of Japanese armor at one side of it. There was a chair just under the lamp, and the elderly man motioned that I should sit in it. The younger had left us, but he suddenly returned through another door, leading with him a gentleman clad in some sort of loose dressing gown who moved slowly towards us. As he came into the circle of dim light which enabled me to see him more clearly, I was thrilled with horror at his appearance. He was deadly pale and terribly emaciated, with the protruding, brilliant eyes of a man whose spirit was greater than his strength. But what shocked me more than the signs of physical weakness was that his face was grotesquely crisscrossed with sticking plaster, and that one large patch of it was plastered over his mouth. "Have you the slate, Harold?" cried the older man, as this strange being fell rather than sat down into the chair. Are his hands loose? Now then, give him a pencil. You are to ask the questions, Mr. Melas, and he will write the answers. Ask him first of all whether he is prepared to sign the papers. The man's eyes flashed fire. Never, he wrote in Greek upon the slate. On no condition, I asked at the bidding of our tyrant. Only if I see her married in my presence by a Greek priest whom I know. What the fuck? The man giggled in his venomous way. You know what awaits you then. I care nothing for myself. These are samples of the questions and answers which made up our strange half-spoken, half-written conversation. Again and again I had to ask him whether he would give in and sign the documents. Again and again I had the same indignant reply. But soon a happy thought came to me. I took to adding on little sentences of my own to each question, innocent ones at first, to test whether either of our companions knew anything of the matter. And then, as I found this showed no signs, I played a more dangerous game. Our conversation ran something like this. You can do no good by this obstinacy. Who are you? I care not. I am a stranger in London. Your fate will be brought upon your head. How long have you been here? Let it be so. 3 weeks. The property can never be yours. What ails you? It shall not go to the villains. They are starving me. You shall go free if you sign. What house is this? I will never sign. I do not know. Oh no, my internet disappeared. What the fuck? Hello? Why is this happening? Why are we... OBS? OBS, why are you being a wiener? OBS, why are you being a wiener? What is happening? Oh my god. Hello? Oh, I don't think this is recoverable at this point, is it? Wait, how is it now? Are we here? Are we functioning? I think it's good. I think we might be back. I think I'm back. I think I am. It's gone green again, which is good. I don't know what the fuck happened. That was terrifying. But like, I think we're good. I don't know why. I don't know what happened. Because my internet was working fine everywhere. Like on my phone and stuff. So what beef did OBS have suddenly? You know? Okay. Back to reading, I guess. gosh. Okay. So, continue reading. If I remember where I was. Hmm. You are not doing her any service. What is your name? Let me hear her say so. Cradites. You shall see her if you sign. Where are you from? And I shall never see her. Athens. Another 5 minutes, Mr. Holmes, and I should have wormed out the whole story under their very noses. My very next question might have cleared the matter up, but at that instant the door opened, and a woman stepped into the room. I could not see her clearly enough to know more than she was tall and graceful, with black hair and clad in some sort of loose white gown. Harold, said she, speaking English in a broken accent, I could not stay away longer. It is so lonely up there with only— Oh my God, it is Paul! These last words were in Greek, and at the same instant the man with the convulsive effort tore the plaster from his lips, screaming out, "Sophie! Sophie!" rushed into the woman's arms. Their embrace was but for an instant, however, for the younger man seized the woman and pushed her out of the room, while the elder easily overpowered his emaciated victim and dragged him away through the other door. For a moment I was left alone in the room, and I sprang to my feet with some vague idea that I might in some way get a clue to what this house was in, which I found myself. Fortunately, however, I took no steps, but looking up I saw that the older man was standing in the doorway with his eyes fixed upon me. "That will do, Mr. Melas," said he. "You perceive that we have taken you into our confidence over some very private business. We should not have troubled you, only that our friend who speaks Greek, and who began these negotiations, has been forced to return to the East. It is quite necessary for us to find someone to take his place, and we were fortunate in your hearing of your powers." I bowed. "There are 5 sovereigns here," said he, walking up to me, "which will, I hope, be a sufficient fee. But remember," he added, tapping me lightly on the chest and giggling, "if you speak to a human soul about this— one human soul, mind— well, may God have mercy upon your soul." I cannot tell you the loathing and horror which this insignificant looking man inspired in me. I could see him better now that the lamplight shone upon him. His features were peaked and sallow, and his little pointed beard was thready and ill-nourished. He pushed his face forward as he spoke, and his lips and eyelids were continually twitching like a man with St. Vitus's dance. I could not help thinking that his strange, catchy little laugh was also a symptom of some nervous malady. The terror of his face lay in his eyes, however, steel grey, and glistening coldly with malignant, inexplorable cruelty in their depths. "We shall know if you speak of this," said he. "We have our own means of information. Now you will find the carriage waiting, and my friend will see you on your way." I was hurried through the hall and into the vehicle, again obtaining the momentary glimpse of trees and a garden. Mr. Latimer followed closely at my heels. Oh no, what? Okay, right, okay. Hmm. "You will get down here, Mr. Melas," said my companion. "I am sorry to leave you so far from your house, but there is no alternative. Any attempt upon your part to follow the carriage can only end in injury to yourself." He opened the door as he spoke, and I had hardly time to spring out when the coachman lashed the horse and the carriage rattled away. I looked around me in astonishment. I was on some sort of healthy common mottled over with dark clumps of fir bushes. Far away stretched a line of houses. with the light here and there in the upper windows. On the other side, I saw the red signal lamps of a railway. The carriage which had brought me was already out of sight. I stood gazing round and wondered where on earth I might be when I saw someone coming towards me in the darkness. As he came up to me, I made out that he was a railway porter. Can you tell me what place this is? I asked. Wandsworth Common, said he. Can I get a train into town? If you walk on a mile or so to Junction, said he, you'll be just in time for the last of Victoria. So that was the end of my adventure, Mr. Holmes. I do not know where I was, nor whom I spoke with, nor anything save what I have told you. But I know that there is foul play going on, and I want to help that unhappy man if I can. I told the whole story to Mr. Mycroft Holmes next morning, and subsequently to the police. We all sat in silence for some time after listening to his extraordinary narrative. Then Sherlock looked across at his brothers. Sorry, give me a sec. I'm going to adjust my chair. Hi, hi, hi. Thank you so much for the follow, Kachi. Welcome in, welcome in. I hope you enjoy your stay. Right. Any steps? He asked. Mycroft picked up the Daily News, which was lying on the side table. Anybody supplying information as to the whereabouts of a Greek gentleman named Paul Kratides from Athens, who is unable to speak English, will be rewarded. A similar reward will be paid to anyone giving information about a Greek lady whose first name is Sophie. That was all in all the dailies. No answer. How about Greek legation? I have inquired. They know nothing. A wire to the head of Athens police, then? Sherlock has all the energy of the family, said Mycroft, turning to me. Well, you take up the case by all means, and let me know if they do you any good. Certainly, answered my friend, rising from his chair. I'll let you know, and Mr. Melas also. In the meantime, Mr. Melas, I should certainly be on my guard if I were you, for of course they must know through these advertisements that you have betrayed them. As we walked together, Holmes stopped at a telegraph office and sent off several wires. You see, Watson, he remarked, our evening has by no means been wasted. Some of my most interesting cases have come to me in this way through Mycroft. The problem which I have just listened to, although it can admit but one explanation, has some distinguishing features. We have hopes of solving it? Well, knowing as much as we do, it will be singular indeed if we fail to discover the rest. You must yourself have formed some theory in which will explain the facts to which we have listened. In a vague way, yes. What is your idea, then? It seemed to be obvious that this Greek girl had been carried off by the young Englishman named Harold Latimer. Carried off from where? Athens, perhaps. Sherlock Holmes shook his head. This young man could not talk a word of Greek. The lady could talk English fairly well. Inference that she had been in England some little time, but he had not been in Greece. Well, then, we will presume that she had come on a visit to England, and that this Harold had persuaded her to fly with him. That is more probable. Then the brother, but that I fancy must be the relationship, comes over from Greece to interfere. He imprudently put himself in the power of the young man and his older associate. They seize him and use violence towards him in order to make him sign some papers to make over the girl's fortune, of which he may be trustee to them. This he refuses to do. In order to negotiate with him, they have to get an interpreter, and they pitch upon this Mr. Melas having used some other one before. This girl is not told of the arrival of the brother, and finds it out by the merest accident. Excellent, Watson, cried Holmes. I really fancy that you are not far from the truth. You see that we hold all the cards, and we have only to fear some sudden act of violence on their part. If they give us time, we must have them. But how can we find where this house lies? Why do I keep disconnecting? That's weird. Well, if our conjecture is correct and the girl's name is or was Sophie Cratides, we much Cratides, we much we should have no difficulty in tracking her. This must be our main hope, for the brother is, of course, a complete stranger. It is clear that some time has elapsed with the girl, some weeks at any rate, since the brother in Greece has had time to hear of it and come across. If they have been living in the same place during this time, it is probable that we shall have some answer to Mycroft's advertisement. We reached our house in Baker Street while we had been talking. Holmes ascended the stair first, and as he opened the door of our room, he gave a start of surprise. Looking over his shoulder, I was equally astonished. His brother Mycroft was sitting smoking in the armchair. Come in, Sherlock, come in, sir, he said blandly, smiling at our surprised faces. You don't expect such energy from me, do you, Sherlock? But somehow this case attracts me. Bye, Eden. I hope you have a lovely day at work. It's not too difficult. How did you get here? I passed you in a hansom. There has been some new development. I had an answer to my advertisement. Ah, yes, it came within a few minutes of your leaving. And to what effect? Mycroft Holmes took out a sheet of paper. Here it is, said he, written with a J pen on royal cream paper by a middle-aged man with a weak constitution. Sir, he says, in answer to your advertisement of today's date, I beg to inform you that I know the young lady in question very well. If you should care to call upon me, I could give you some particulars as to her painful history. She is living presently at the Myrtles, Beckenham. Yours faithfully, J. Davenport. He writes from Lower Brixton, said Mycroft Holmes. Do you not think that we might drive to him now, Sherlock, and learn these particulars? My dear Mycroft, the brother's life is more valuable than the sister's story. I think we should call at Scotland Yard for Inspector Gregson and go straight out to Beckenham. We know that a man is being done to death, and every hour may be vital. Better pick up Mr. Melas on our way, I suggested. We may need an interpreter. Excellent, said Sherlock Holmes. Send the boy for a four-wheeler, and we shall be off at once. He opened the table drawer as he spoke, and I noticed he slipped his revolver into his pocket. Yes, said he in an answer to my glance. I should say from what we have heard that we are dealing with a particularly dangerous gang. It was almost dark before we found ourselves in Pall Mall at the rooms of Mr. Maylard. A gentleman had just called for him, and he was gone. Oh no. Can you tell me where? Asked Mycroft Holmes. I don't know, sir, answered the woman who had opened the door. I only know that he drove away with the gentleman in a carriage. Did the gentleman give him a name? No, sir. He wasn't a tall, handsome, dark young man. Oh, no, sir. He was a little gentleman, with glasses, thin in the face, but very pleasant in his ways, for he was laughing all the time that he was talking. Come along, cried Sherlock Holmes abruptly. This grows serious, he observed as we drove to Scotland Yard. These men have got hold of Melas again. He is a man of no physical courage, as they are well aware from their experience the other night. This villain was able to terrorize him the instant he got into his presence. No doubt they want his professional services, but, having used him, they may be inclined to punish him for what they will regard as treachery. Our hope was that, by taking train, we might get to Beckenham as soon or sooner than the carriage. On reaching Scotland Yard, however, it was more than an hour before we could get Inspector Gregson and comply with the legal formalities which would enable us to enter the house. It was 10:15 before we reached London Bridge, and a half-past before the four of us alighted on the Beckenham platform. A drive of half a mile brought us to the Myrtles, a large dark house standing back from the road in its own grounds. Ere we dismissed the cab and made our way up the drive together. The windows are all dark, remarked the inspector. The house seems deserted. Our birds are flown and the nest empty, said Holmes. Thank you for the hydrate. Mm, why do you say so? A carriage heavily loaded with luggage has passed out during the last hour. The inspector laughed. I saw the wheel tracks in the light of the gate lamp, but where does the luggage come in? You may have observed the same wheel tracks going the other way, but the outward bound ones were very much deeper, so much so that we can say for certainty that there was very considerable weight on the carriage. You get a trifle beyond me there, said the inspector, shrugging his shoulder. It will not be an easy door to force, but if we try, we can make it someone hear us. He hammered loudly at the knocker and pulled at the bell, but without any success. Holmes had slipped away, but he came back in a few minutes. I have a window open, he said. It is a mercy that you are on the right side of the force, Holmes, and not against it, Mr. Holmes, remarked the inspector, as he noted the clever way in which my friend had forced back the cat. Well, I think that under the circumstances we may enter without an invitation. I just had the best 11, an 8-man group of Super Battle Golf. That sounds like absolute fucking chaos, but I'm glad that you had fun. I'm glad you had fun, and I hope you have a very good night, IDK. And hi, welcome in. Thank you so much for the follow, Justin Not Found. Welcome, welcome. Oh my god. Hi. Thank you so much for the follow. Enlightener. Oh my god, what is happening? Why are so many people following suddenly? Hello. Thank you. Oh, oh, your name's Otter. I love Otter so much. But hey, thank you everybody. Welcome in, welcome in. Now I'm just thinking of otters. I love otters for real. Have a good day, IDK. Thank you. I hope you have a good night. Now, where was I? There we go. One after the other, we made our way into a large apartment, which was evidently that in which Mr. Melas had found himself. The inspector had lit his lantern, and by its light we could see the two doors, the curtain, the lamp, and the suit of Japanese mail as he had described them. On the table lay two glasses, an empty brandy bottle, and the remains of a meal. Sorry, give me a second. Okay, I gotta end stream soon. Starting to get interrupted now. Okay. What's that? Asked Holmes suddenly. We all stood still and listened. A low moaning sound was coming from somewhere over our heads. Holmes rushed to the door and out into the hall. The dismal noise came from upstairs. He dashed up, and the inspector and I at his heels, while his brother Mycroft followed as quickly as his great bulk would permit. 3 doors face up on the first floor, on the second floor, and it was from the central of these that the sinister sounds were issuing, sinking sometimes into a dull mumble and rising again into a shrill whine. It was locked, but the key had been left on the outside. Holmes flung open the door and rushed in, but was out again in an instant with his hands to his throat. It's charcoal, he cried. Give it time. It'll clear. Peering in, we could see that the only light in the room came from the dull blue flame which flickered from a small brass tripod in the center. It threw a livid, unnatural circle upon the floor, while in the shadows beyond we saw the vague loom of two figures which crouched against the wall. From the open door there reeked a horrible poisonous exhalation which set us gasping and coughing. Holmes rushed to the top of the stairs to draw in the fresh air, and then, rushing into the room, he threw open the window and hurled the brazen tripod out into the garden. "We can enter in a minute," he gasped, darting out again. "Where is a candle? I doubt if we could strike a match in that atmosphere. Hold the light at the door and we shall get them out, Mycroft. Now." With a rush we got to the poisoned men. I got very coffee suddenly. Dudes were poisoned. That's what's happening. And I might be reading a bit too quickly because I gotta run soon. Mycroft's taking part in the investigation, which is wild. There we go. With a rush, we got the With a rush, we got to the poisoned men and dragged them out into the well-lit hall. Both of them were blue-lipped and insensible, with swollen, congested faces and protruding eyes. Indeed, so distorted were their faces that, save for the black beard and stout figure, we might have failed to recognize that one of them the Greek interpreter who had parted from us only a few hours before at Diogenes' club. His hands and feet were securely strapped together, and he bore over one eye the marks of a violent blow. The other, who was secured in a similar fashion, was a tall man in the last stages of emaciation, with several strips of sticking plaster arranged in a grotesque pattern over his face. He had ceased to moan as we laid him down, and a glance showed me that for him, at least, our aid had come too late. Mr. Melas, however, still lived, and in less than an hour, with the aid of ammonia and brandy, that I had the satisfaction of seeing him open his eyes, and of knowing that my hand had drawn him back from the dark valley in which all paths meet. It was a simple story which he had to tell, and one which did but confirm our own deductions. His visitor, on entering his rooms, had drawn a life-preserver from his sleeve, and had so impressed him with the fear of instant and inevitable death that he had kidnapped him for the second time. Indeed, it was almost mesmeric, the effect which the giggling ruffian had produced upon the unfortunate linguist, for he could not speak of him save with trembling hands and a blanched cheek. He had been taken swiftly to Beckenham, and had acted as interpreter in a second interview, even more dramatic than the first, in which the two Englishmen had menaced their prisoners with instant death if he did not comply with their demands. Finally, finding him proof against every threat, they had hurled him back into his prison, and after reproaching Melas with his treachery, which appeared from the newspaper advertisement, they had stunned him with a blow from a stick, and he had remembered nothing more until he found us bending over him. And this was the singular case of the Grecian interpreter, the explanation of which is involved in some mystery. We were able to find out, by communicating with the gentleman who had answered the advertisement, that the unfortunate lady came of wealthy Grecian family, and that she had been on a visit to some friends in England. While there, she had met a young man named Harold Latimer, who had acquired an ascendancy over her, and had eventually persuaded her to fly with him. Her friends, shocked at the event, had contented themselves with informing her brother at Athens, and had then washed their hands of the matter. The brother, on his arrival in England, had imprudently placed himself in the power of Latimer and of his associate, whose name was Wilson Kemp, a man of the foulest antecedents. These two, finding that through his ignorance of the language he was helpless in their hands, had kept him prisoner, and had endeavoured by cruelty and starvation to make him sign away his own and his sister's property. They had kept him in the house without the girl's knowledge, and the plaster over the face had been for the purpose of making recognition difficult in case she should ever clasp a glimpse of him. Her feminine perception, however, had instantly seen through the disguise when, on the occasion of the interpreter's visit, she had seen him for the first time. The poor girl, however, was herself a prisoner, but there was no one about the house except the man who acted as coachman and his wife, both of whom who were tools of the conspirators. Finding that their secret was out, and that their prisoner was not to be coerced, the two villains went the girl had fled away at the few hours' notice from the furnished house which they had hired, having first, as they thought, taken vengeance upon both the man who had defied and the man who had betrayed them. Months afterwards, a curious newspaper cutting reached us from Budapest. It told how two Englishmen who had been traveling with a woman had met with a tragic end. They had each been stabbed, it seems, and the Hungarian police were of the opinion that they had quarrelled and had inflicted mortal injuries upon another. Holmes, however, is, I fancy, of a different way of thinking, and holds to this day that if one could find the Grecian girl, one might learn how the wrongs of herself and her brother came to be avenged. And that is the story of the Greek interpreter. We did two whole stories today. That's pretty impressive. My throat hurts a lot now. But it's time for me to run, as that shall be the end of stream. Um, Let me see. Is that person live? Hmm. Perfect. Awesome. So, thank you guys, everybody, for hanging out with me today. I really, really appreciate it. And I will see y'all later tonight for some gaming streams. Alright. Bye bye.